Hello, everyone. I'm Peyton.
I'm Sam.
And this is Uncontrolled Population. Welcome back.
Welcome. Glad to be back, Peyton.
Glad to be back, Sam. It's Thursday, March 26th today.
Indeed. And today we are talking about something known as Project Stargate, which, a little bit of context, there is a new Stargate-ish thing happening, which is dealing with AI and satellites, but that is not what we're talking about. This one is a past CIA started project, and it's been given multiple different names until this umbrella term called Project Stargate. So before we get into that, Peyton has some current events for us. What's going on in the world, Peyton?
So right now, for a while, TSA workers have not been getting paid their normal salary and stuff because there's like a partial government shutdown or something. It seems like every freaking 2 months there's like a government shutdown at this point.
This current administration shithole, yeah.
Yeah. So basically with that, obviously not as many people are showing up to work and stuff because obviously they're not getting fucking paid. So like airport lines have been long and stuff. I've known a couple of people that have been traveling. Denver doesn't seem to be too bad. I've noticed a couple things of like one thing I saw was like the train was down and then like a bunch of flights got like backed up and stuff. But Denver's been doing okay. But we also have that new like security system. But with that though, then Trump decided to send in ICE agents into the airports to basically exacerbate the situation, make everything worse. I already saw a video of a lady getting taken by ICE, and she had her daughter in the video who's like crying, and they're like grabbing her and like trying to shove her in this like chair. It was honestly horrendous to watch. It was really bad.
Jesus.
So yeah, they're already doing kind of stuff like that. And something a little bit weird, which is like kind of a tie into right now of like our media and what we watch. But it was kind of weird because in Handmaid's Tale, when they're trying to leave the country, it's a lesbian couple with their son. And they're trying to leave to Canada. And like you see a little glimpse of the customs agent that's like honestly treating them like shit. And it says like ICE on the uniform. So that kind of creeped me out.
Oh my
honestly.
God.
Yeah.
Wow,
and
dude.
people were saying that having ICE agents in the airport and like basically have it like almost like a private entity was in Project 2025. So yeah, they already have written about this, and obviously this was a prediction that was going to happen. So yeah, obviously I think it's probably a little bit on purpose to be able to, go and have people come in like that to the
Absolutely.
airport.
It's definitely not an accident. This isn't just like a one-off thing either. This is planned.
No, yeah. So I did see something, it was on Reuters, but that Trump possibly is going to be paying them or something. So we'll kind of see what's in the works for that. But yeah, basically right now, if you don't have your proper documents, honestly, even if you do, they're getting people. So just if you're going to the airport, don't have anyone drop you off that doesn't have a citizenship status. Like that's basically where we're at right now, you guys. Just be extra careful. It's almost like another checkpoint at this point. So yeah, just be safe, be careful, make sure all your documents are in line. Yeah.
I did hear about this. They're taking donations. So like there are donation boxes throughout the airport that some of these, sorry, I'm hearing some weird thing coming from the microphone that I'm going to adjust in just a little bit. But that is something in order to like make up for the wages that are being cut. They are giving donation boxes, then people can donate to help the TSA agents and the
like food
staff.
and stuff. I've seen like them get food and like maybe stuff like that, but
this was like cash.
Oh, thank God, finally. Oh, that's my garage.
Oh, word.
My garage was having issues today. I accidentally broke off the little sensor thing, so it won't close. So yeah, yay for being an adult.
Yay.
But
I also have one other piece of good news.
Okay,
Do you want to go first on what you're going to say?
No, you go first.
So this is just like a little local article that I found off the Good News Network. The title of it is Community Rallies Behind Local Autistic Barista After Hip's Tips Were Stolen. Basically, this autistic barista's name was Michael Coyne, spelled Coyne, an interesting spelling. He was a barista. I think his adopted caretaker basically opened up this coffee shop with the intention of him being able to work there.
Perfect.
Which is really nice because that is inclusion of all. And he was really friendly with most of the people that came in and out, a big majority of them. So when somebody stole his tips, it was about $20 that they had taken. They took the whole freaking jar too. It was a really like personal thing for him, so he was really sad. And then a police officer ended up coming in for a cup of coffee, and then found out like, oh, my tips kind of got stolen. So he reported up the chain and investigated it. And also the mayor got involved too, because the caretaker had made a Facebook post, and the mayor ended up getting involved too, which is kind of interesting. So the community basically like rallied around him. He ended up making like $900 at the end of this.
Love that.
So you might have lost 20, Michael, but you ended up making $880 back.
More.
So we love
Yay.
that. Good for you, Michael. So that's my little piece of good news. And before we get into the real meat and potatoes of this episode with Project Stargate, Peyton's going to give us some context of some of the different ESPs that there are out there. And while you do that, I'm going to just fiddle a little bit with this and see if I can make this sound go away.
Perfect. Sam is our host and our tech guy and our editor, so he wears a lot of hats. So I just kind of wanted to touch on just some of the spiritual aspects of this. So we know this, well, me and Sam know this because we ended up researching this, obviously. But this started back then during like the Cold War. And it was, the beef between Russia and the United States. And so Russia actually kind of started this. And then the United States got word of it. And so they're like, ooh, we need to kind of start researching this. So I'm a personal believer that everyone has the ability to do this. It's just like you have to really practice it. Not everyone has every ability, but everyone's probably got to have at least one. So I just wanted to talk about the Clairs, which if you ever listen to Fires of Change, Kylie kind of went over this and talked about this. But there's 8 different Clairs, basically. So there's clairvoyance. So that's clear seeing, visions, images. So that'll just like pop into your brain and kind of give you some insight of what's going on. There's clairaudience. So that's clear hearing sounds and words. So this actually happened to Steph a couple of times where she was like, oh, do you hear that? And I was like, no. And so she's like hearing stuff that I'm not hearing. I've noticed she has a lot more of that gift, I would say, than I do.
And how, out of quick curiosity, how is this different? And what makes it distinct from just having good hearing?
Okay, so clairaudience is like almost like you're hearing someone like speak to you, but like no one's there. So you clearly hear something, but then it's like no one else hears it. And
you don't hear like a voice, or could you also in line hear a voice in your head, but mistake it for like hearing it audibly?
Yeah. So there's another one called claircognizant, and that's clear knowing, insight, and knowledge. So that's more when it like pops into your head and you don't know where like the information came from. But clairaudience is more when it's almost like you hear someone speak, or you hear words, or just like little phrases. And then again, obviously no one else hears them. So it's something you're tapping into that maybe someone else isn't.
Okay.
There's clairsentient, which is clear feeling, emotions, and senses. So that's there's kind of all of them kind of, I want to say, web into each other. They kind of spider web out where they all kind of coexist, but they're all a little bit separate, if that makes sense.
There's something that makes them distinct.
Yeah. So clairsentient is more like like you feel emotions. Like, let's say you're really pissed off, and then it's like I'm almost feeling pissed off because it's like I'm feeling your pissed offness.
Okay.
Yeah. And then so if growing up, like I would say I would probably resonate with that, where it's like growing up I would have these feelings where it's like I would feel so upset, so distraught, so whatever, and it was like I had no reason for me to feel that way.
You almost felt like it was somebody else's feelings.
Well, I think the older I got, the more I felt that way. I was like, oh, this isn't my feelings. I'm picking up on someone else's emotions or vibes. But obviously growing up I didn't know that, so It was a lot of like me kind of confused of like, why am I feeling this way?
Yeah. But
now I can kind of put up a like guard or wall when someone else is feeling that way. It's like I don't have to necessarily take on that energy.
Yeah.
So yeah, then there's, like I said, clear cognizance. So that's clear knowing and insights and knowledge. So that's when stuff just like pops into your head and you're like, where did that come from? A lot of times I feel like when I give like advice to my friends, like I just start talking and I don't know where I'm going with it. And then it just kind of comes out and I'm like, oh yeah, that was like good advice. But like, where did that come from? I don't know. Gotcha. I think a lot of people have that one. Then there is Clair aliens, which is smelling, sense, and odors. So like if you're in a room and you're like, oh, I smell cigarettes, or I smell a certain perfume, or I smell a certain flower, but like no one's wearing it. It's like you could be picking up on an energy, a ghost, or whatever people want to call it, but you're picking up on a smell. Then there's clairgustance, which is clear tasting flavors and taste. So like maybe you all of a sudden taste like cinnamon and like you didn't eat cinnamon. So just picking up on, stuff like that.
Interesting.
That one I don't hear a lot about.
Yeah.
That's probably like the least one I've heard about, honestly.
Hey, weird thing that literally just popped into my head as soon as you said that. So this happened to me like twice where a random taste came into my mouth. And I remember that it was very, very earthy. Like I had taken a mouthful of dirt.
Okay.
It was gross. And like, I don't know where it had come from. I was like, am I having a heart attack right now? Like, why am I getting the taste of dirt in my mouth? I don't know. But literally that just reminded me of it. Yeah. So you now know somebody.
So now right there we go. Everyone has a ability. Sam tastes dirt, apparently. So then there's clairtangencies. So this is like if someone were to touch a clothing item or a blanket or whatever the case is, they can tap into the energy on that, where it's like they can pick up like the feelings of the person that owned it or history of it or literally anything about it. But that's how they have their gifts of like touching something and then they get like, who knows, maybe it's then like some clairvoyance where you get some, seeing visions of it or whatever.
There's on that there for my nerds out there, there's actually a video game where the main character does that. Oh. They go around and I forgot what the term was. Okay. It was a Star Wars game, but they touch something and they were able to get like a vision of what happened with that thing. Maybe it's traumatic, maybe it's just some context. But yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. So then there's also clear empathy. So that's clear emotional understanding. So that also again ties in with clear sentience and honestly kind of clear cognizant. But that's basically just like being able to pick up on people's emotions and understand what they're going through, even if they're not like talking about it or speaking about it. It almost like the knowing, pops into your body. So those are, all the clairs. So there's also some like different physical abilities, which is kind of starting to get more into the Project Stargate aspect of it. So there's telepathy. So that is the ability to pass information, ideas, impressions, feelings, moods, and thoughts between living beings without the involvement of known sensory organs. So that's like if I'm thinking of something and then Sam says it out loud. Which honestly, this happens with me and my girlfriend quite a bit, where like I'll think something, she'll say it out loud, or I'll say something out loud and she was thinking it. I'm like, every time that happens, I'm always like, oh my God, that's actually so fucking cool.
Yeah.
Then there's precognition. So that's the prediction of future events that are already anticipated or already subsequently experienced, whereby the prediction can relate to a few seconds up to many years. So basically, like, you can think something and then all of a sudden down the line it happens. One of my ones that was like, honestly, it's kind of silly, but I still think it's cool, is one day I was cooking at like my old house. Like, I lived there when I was like 20, I think. And I was cooking and we didn't have a lot of like pantry space or anything like that. So we had to store everything in the cabinets. So I put all the stuff away, put the oil away, and I was just like, honestly, like, that would really suck if one day the oil like spilt out. I don't even know why I thought it. It was such a random thing I thought. Didn't think anything of it. And I kid you not, I come back like a couple hours later and the oil has spilled all down, and then the microwave was right there. It spilled all over the microwave. Wow. And I was just like, oh my God, that's so fucking annoying. Like, and back then I was like, oh, I manifested it. But honestly, now I look at it and was like, okay, maybe I was just like picking up on that was going to happen. I've had a lot of little tiny things like that.
That happened to me earlier today.
Okay.
So at the facility that I work on, they have these fake bird noises that play sometimes. They're really annoying. And I was literally just like doing a little round around the courtyard. And I thought, I hadn't heard that thing in a while. I wonder when I'm in here again. And as soon as that thought ended, I heard it. It's like, damn it, hit me right.
No, literally. And it's like, it's kind of cool, but then it's also like, okay, well, I was right about something super fucking annoying.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So that's precognition. Mediumship is a medium or a channel, refers to a person who can establish a connection with the spiritual world and is able to convey messages between people and supernatural beings such as angels, spirits, or the deceased. So, you know, there was that one lady, Long Island medium, like she's a good example of mediumship, where, you know, she's picking up on things from the other side. I tried to go to a medium when I was in Salem, actually, because I wanted to get in contact with my aunt that has passed, because she was like super, super into spirituality. She was kind of the first person that like showed me that world, and like she loved to go to haunted places. She'd tell me about all her fun experiences. So she was actually kind of my person that got me into that. But I knew she would want me to go to something like that. But what I will say from my experience is, do your research on the medium. If you can get in that day, they might not be the best, which is something I learned. And then you almost want to tell them no information about the person you're trying to contact, because any tiny information they have, if there's someone that's just doing it for like a scam, obviously they're going to kind of create a whole story and like pick up things around that and kind of tell you what you want to hear. So I feel like there was only one thing she told me that like I could feel that was maybe my aunt was telling me what was to slow down, which I don't know what that pertains to. But anytime there's a situation where if I'm driving, if I'm doing something and I'm like trying to hurry through it, like that always pops in my head of like, slow down. So that was the one thing she told me that stuck. Everything else was kind of
up in the air. Like it could have been a guess.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So yeah, that's just kind of an example. So then there's telekinesis. So that's movements of objects through the power of human consciousness without the aid of hands or other instruments that touch the object. So basically, for anyone that's ever seen Matilda, that's a great example of telekinesis, because she can move things with her mind. She would move a book, candy, whatever. So yeah, that's one. Then there's apparition, right? I'm saying that correct? Yep. Okay. And that is the type of psychic ability that is defined as the appearance or disappearance of an object without physical touch. So my personal one that I thought of was sometimes when I'm looking for something, I will look literally fucking everywhere. Like, and it's like I'm looking on all the surfaces, whatever. And this has happened to me so many times, and it pisses me off because it's like I'm always late and shit. But basically I'll be, let's say my water bottle, I'll be looking for my water bottle. I look fucking everywhere for it. It's nowhere to be found. I go downstairs, come back upstairs, and then it ends up being on like my dresser, which it's like, clearly I would have saw it on my fucking dresser, and it wasn't on my dresser. So sometimes that's when I'm like, okay, the universe is playing tricks on me.
Ooh, I had a thought. What if those that are able to make something go invisible, what if the object itself isn't going invisible, but rather a trick that they're playing on other people's minds, where the thing like perception of something,
Yeah.
like the same thing where like if you're looking at a bunch of things on like a table, you might miss something. Well, what if they're interacting with you directly, like have an effect, kind of like what was it? Not telekinesis. Psychokinesis. No, what was it? It was like minds. That was like the first thing that you said. I'm blanking on it so bad right now.
Wait,
telepathy.
The telepathy one of
Yeah.
this one. Yeah. Okay.
But it's like a direct impact on a person's brain. I don't know.
Honestly, that's a good thought process, because honestly, that's what's cool about this like science or this field or this whatever is like there's so much unknown that it's like I feel like when people are so tied to an arbitrary fact or something like that and they can't get over it, it's like almost like you got to kind of expand your mind to know that there's like not going to be stuff that we understand or it's not going to make sense to us, but it still is real even if we get it or not.
It's true. And
that brings us to our last one.
That does. Our last ability is something called remote viewing, which from you talking about those different Clairs and the different abilities, it sounds like it could be a mix of them.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, remote viewing is the ability to detect or perceive an object or a person from a great distance. So an example is, let's say me and Peyton were doing an experiment. Somebody comes in, they give Peyton an envelope. Peyton's like the tester in this scenario. And she has the envelope. She doesn't know what it is. And then she gives the envelope to me and says, this is your target. Describe the target or tell me what the target is doing. Or they will ask like clarifying questions like that. So me as the subject, I will try to describe this target. I might have coordinates. That would be the only thing that I get. Or I just have the envelope in my hand. And a lot of the remote viewers that I have listened to and kind of investigated say that they try to clear their mind and they try to have the first thing that comes into their brain put on paper. So they'll either draw it or they will speak it and they'll get visions of it or a feeling. They might see it in their brain. And then they will either put it down on paper or there will be a recording in the room. And then after everything is said and done, and they're like, okay, that's it. Then the tester, in this case, Peyton, will open up the envelope and then tell me what it is. And it'll either be correct or not. And sometimes they'll even drive out to that spot. So, like Peyton said, this is something that started as a result of the Cold War. Basically, the CIA had gotten information that the Soviet Union was putting a bunch of money towards ESP and psychic research. And one of the things that they knew was if this was real, there would be no way to defend against it. Like if you locked up a bunch of your secrets into a vault, that person could literally just go in, get a bunch of words, which has happened.
Yeah.
Get a bunch of words in their head, and then it's all your secrets just out there in the open. There's no defending against it. So they were like, all right, well, we got to defend against it. We got to start this project also going into ESP and psychic research. And the way that this started was there was a gentleman named Hal Puthoff. He was a physicist and he also helped to like construct and build these lasers. So he had credentials under him. He had published some papers, and one day he was experimenting with this, what is it called? It's a polygraph scientist, a polygraph operator. I could get his name, but for right now, we're going to leave that out. And the polygraph operator was actually experimenting with plants. So he'd hook the plants up to the polygraph and he would yell at them, and then he'd see like a spike from the polygraph from him directly like interacting with the plants. So Hal Puthoff was like, okay, I understand waves, I understand how light waves work, but I don't understand consciousness. This is when something called quantum physics started to like emerge, and quantum physics is basically affecting one thing and then something else directly being affected by that thing.
So kind of like the butterfly effect?
Kind of like the butterfly effect, but more direct, I guess.
Okay.
Like two of the same particles existing at the same time. Or the same particle existing in two different spaces at the exact same time. Kind of like that. And we can get into that a little bit more. But basically, Hal was like, okay, I wonder what happens if I take a culture of algae and I separate it. So I have a culture, and then the culture is separated over here. And what would happen if I did something to this culture? Would it affect this one? And, I'm not sure about the results of that. But what mattered was that the polygraph scientist got a hold of it. And then he went to New York and went to a cocktail party. And that's when he met this gentleman named Ingo Swann. Now, Ingo Swann was a self-proclaimed psychic.
Okay.
So the polygraph scientist invited Ingo back to his laboratory to run some experiments with the plants. And he wanted to show him like the experiments that he was doing with the polygraph. And then Ingo ended up stumbling upon Hal Puthoff's research. And Ingo messaged Hal Puthoff and said, well, algae is not going to really do anything for you. So why don't you have me come in and I'll show you like how this works a little bit more about consciousness. So he kind of inserted himself into the conversation, which is kind of funny. But Hal was like, sure, come by. So they started doing experiments in the laboratory where there was like a temperature controller that would measure the temperature of the room.
Okay.
And he would, on command, affect it, kind of like psychokinesis, telekinesis, in a way. And then I remember hearing from a interview that Hal Puthoff did on the Joe Rogan podcast. I only appreciated this one because it was more about the facts and not talking about like political anything like that. But it was more Hal Puthoff talking. So first source information coming from Puthoff. And he said that Ingo was also messing around with like this data chip. And this data chip would measure really, 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 really small particles, also known as quarks, smaller than atoms, really detailed. And Ingo would mess with it. He'd also be able to like tell you what was inside of this chip, and like it would be accurate. So this chip was made by like a college student, and his whole career was basically like on the verge of collapsing if Ingo was able to do what he said he was going to do. Because he dealt with rationality and science and logic, and Ingo was saying like, I can do these things that defy that. And he was having an effect on it. He would also have an effect on random number generators and say it's going to be 2. And then the random number generator would generate 2 and stuff like that. So eventually Ingo got bored and he was like this stuff is annoying and boring. Like, why don't you just have somebody go out to the middle of the desert and I'll tell you what they're doing, or they'll go to a random location. I'll tell you what they're doing. So that's what happened. They're like, this person, where are they?
Okay.
He's, off the south coast of like California near whatever cross streets doing this thing. And he would be correct at the time of testing, which that's kind of like what remote viewing is. And it also plays into Clair sentience, I think you said, where somebody would just know with like that intuition.
Okay, yeah. So that would be more of the claircognizant.
Claircognizance.
And then I guess probably clairvoyance as well.
Yeah. Also. So
yeah, honestly, everything they're really studying is.
They also studied telekinesis too, as like a sister project of it. They studied that. They studied anything that these, like, I'm pretty sure that they went through all the clairs and like studied all the clairs: sense, touch, taste, just emotional feelings, psychokinesis. They try to do that, but according to another person that had firsthand experience inside of this, they said that they could never isolate the object. Like they had something inside of like shielding, and other stimuli would actually ended up having an effect on it. So like this thing was affected by a truck that would go over this metal railing like a mile away, and then every time that this truck would go over this metal railing, it would have an effect on it. Or like the elevator would go by, and every time it passed by their level, it would like bing or something like that.
Okay.
So the reason why, according to him, they stopped is because they could never isolate the thing enough, which...
Oh, so there was never like a control of the experiment.
Yes.
Okay.
And after watching a movie called Chronicle, I actually ended up messing around with this on my own.
Okay.
Where I had like a glass dome, and I had a needle and an eraser, and I made... You remember in school where you'd make those like things that went pew, 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 pew. You know what I'm talking about?
What were those?
You know what I'm talking about, though. It's like a pyramid.
Something catch.
Catcher?
It wasn't a dream catcher. It was, but it would be like, you'd be like, how many numbers? And then you go like this. And then you, okay, now pick a color. Then you do the color. Then you'd flip it up. Yeah.
So I kind of made something that looks similar to it. It was 4 points, and in the middle it connected to the point where like if you even blew at it, it would start spinning.
Okay.
So I put that inside of like a cup, and then I just tried to make it move.
Okay.
Which it never fucking moved. So like I don't know why they wouldn't just do something like that as a control. But anyways, getting back to it, Hal Puthoff was eventually making these these scientific documents and research papers and publishing them, and then they made the rounds inside of the scientific community. And obviously he already had somebody that was connected to the CIA that he had shared this research with the polygraph person. He was actually somebody that was teaching the CIA how to use polygraphs, so he was up there.
Okay.
Either through him or just it being circulated. Eventually the CIA did approach Hal Puthoff, and they said, hey, here's our issue. The Russians are experimenting with psychics, and it seems like this guy Ingo that you're partnered with is getting really close to it. So we'd like to invite you to the Stanford Research Institute.
Okay.
Stanford Research Institute, obviously it's Stanford. It's really high up there. I researched them a little bit. They have their hands in everything.
They do.
Everything.
They really do.
It's no surprise that they were at SRI, as I'm going to call it from here on out. And that's where a majority of these were conducted. There was also another base in Maryland, which, according to the later projects of differing names, was also a hub where these psychics would come in and get training.
Okay.
So this first project was called Scanate, 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 all uppercase. And it stands for scan by coordinate, which what I told you earlier, where these psychics would get coordinates and they would remote view, scan by coordinate. So it wasn't a big thing. It was more of like their footstep into like CIA kind of backing this project. Okay. And Wildflower says cootie catcher or something like that. Yeah.
Cootie catcher. Yeah.
Yeah, cootie catcher. So when they were at SRI, it was this gentleman named Hal Puthoff that I mentioned. It was Ingo Swann, and there were a couple more people in there. One of them was an ex-police officer. I could grab his name in just a second, but what matters is that they were experimenting. They were gradually getting more and more footing, and that's when it actually ended up starting in like 1972, and it ran until like 1974.
Okay.
And when it got to 1974, that's when it changed its name. I think at this point the Army started to get involved. Or if not at this project, it was the next project after this one. But the project that succeeded Scanate was something called Operation Gondola Wish.
Okay.
Which is an interesting name.
Yeah.
But Operation Gondola Wish was tasked with assessing the adversarial effects. So seeing how adversaries could use this to compromise top secret information, and also training psychics against it.
Okay.
So it ran for a few years, and then eventually it became operational. And then in that succession, when it became operational, it was something called Operation Grill Flame.
Okay.
Grill Flame.
Okay.
Interesting. That has nothing to do with psychics.
Like at
But
all.
why? Whatever. Grill Flame was the actual tasks that they were sent out to do.
Okay.
Like it was fully operational at this point. They were doing real world encounters. And I believe even at this point, this was like in the 80s when Operation Grill Flame was starting to.
Okay, which side note, it's weird to think about, like how we always talk about, like we see media mirror what's going on, like for those people that watched Stranger Things, like how they're testing on people and like they have a whole telekinesis thing and human powers. It's like, okay, that's kind of, yeah.
I'm sure Stranger Things got its inspiration from this.
Yeah.
100%. But yeah, like around that time, that's when that happened too. So some of the real world encounters that happened was there was a Soviet spy plane that ended up crashing in Africa in the Congo.
Okay.
The US knew about it and they reached out to the remote viewers in Operation Grill Flame. And at this point, Grill Flame was a army project. I'm going to look up and see where it was operated as I tell this. But basically, they sent out this woman named Rosemary Smith.
Okay.
I think at this point they were maybe still in Maryland, but she was tasked with remote viewing this specific airplane. And she drew up a bunch of maps. And when they sent the paratroopers or the troops out there to recover this plane, they found it almost instantly.
Wow.
It was only 3 miles away from where she predicted.
Wow.
Amazing. The other one involved my favorite remote viewer, Joe McGonigal.
Okay.
We'll talk about him way more later. But he was involved in this one where Iran had taken these hostages. I did not really research why, because this was towards the end of my research. But they had basically taken these hostages. There was another person, I think his name was Paul Smith, which interesting that there was 2 Smiths, but also this is like American 80s and like everybody's named Smith. So like, not really. But anyways, so I know for sure these 2 were on there, and I'm sure that there were also more remote viewer agents, but they found these hostages using these remote viewers. This was also an article that was in the New York Post that I read, one of my sources. So, and I had also heard about it a couple times, according to Joe McGonigal as well, on a podcast where he talked about, like, I don't think it was him. I think it was another remote viewer that was tasked with finding a hostage, and all he got was the smell of roses, just this constant smell of roses. And when the team breached the apartment, which they thought this person was in, there was only one apartment that had a bunch of roses outside of its door. And that was the one where they found the hostage.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. Wow. So I want to talk a little bit more about Joe McGonigal, because he was according to what he had been told, which, you know, you can never believe the government, but he was one of the top remote viewers with like the highest success rate. And I listened to a podcast with him on the Area 52 debriefed podcast with Joe McGonigal, which is about 2 hours long. I still haven't finished the entire thing. I have like 10 minutes left, but there's a lot of good information about this project during that time. I'm pretty sure that he came in during Gondola Wish. I think that's when he got recruited in like Gondola Wish. His backstory is when he was younger, a child, he had 4 sisters, I believe. He was the oldest, and his parents were alcoholics. So he thinks that he developed this ability early on where he had to predict his parents' behavior, and he would always put himself in front of his sisters. Good man. But he was constantly in that like fight or flight response.
Yeah.
Like a lot of anxiety, a lot of trying to observe his environment, observe people. Hypervigilant as heck. And that's the environment which he grew up in. And then later he actually ended up getting involved in the military during Vietnam.
Okay.
He was a radio operator. And according to him, that was the most dangerous position because he could intercept other enemy transmissions at that point. Like they couldn't even like take this thing by hand because it was so big. The battery was so heavy that they couldn't take it by hand. So they had to drive it around in Jeeps. And what he described was something that I kind of am getting a little bit of information and knowledge from, but like just playing video games, specifically one called Daisy, but I will talk about that later. Him in the jungle, he would find like a clearing that he needs to get to, and he would wait for 2 hours and just observe to see if there was anything out of the norm for like 2 hours plus.
Okay.
To see if he saw anything, any twitch of movement, any little smoke from somebody lighting up a cigarette, or any little indication. So he was incredibly hypervigilant at this point. He said that he had 3 near-death experiences. And the last one was from a helicopter crash that really started to make his psychic abilities come to fruition like a lot more.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up because there is this phenomenon that people talk about when they have a near-death experience that they're almost like a little bit tapped into like the other world, the spiritual world. It's almost like the veil is like thinner for them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, with the hypervigilance thing, that's very interesting because so there's this thing called epigenetics. So it's basically when something happens to you, it can alter your DNA and your genes. Yeah. And then that would be passed down generation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, for instance, like how women have like a sixth sense, it's because women over generations had to be very hypervigilant in their environment to kind of make sure they're safe, make sure their kids are safe, friends, whoever.
Yeah.
And so over time, because that information got passed down through DNA, and it's like every woman's DNA was getting changed, women now have, kind of this sixth sense. Same thing with this remote viewer. It's like the more hypervigilant you are, the more tapped into you are to your environment.
It's true.
So then you can kind of read it. You can kind of be precognizant about it. You can be kind of pick up those patterns.
And speaking of epigenetics, so 2 people I know while researching this brought it up, Hal Puthoff and Joe McGonigal, where they hypothesized that when we were in the caveman era and we were surrounded by danger at every single, like everything could kill us. All the saber-toothed tigers, all the freaking mammoths, all of the bugs, everything could kill you. That you had to develop this cognition in order to stay alive. So it was something that we passed down through our epigenetics up until the modern man, though the modern man is getting more and more out of touch with it. Like
now our stressors or our threats are different. Now it's more like psychological, mental. Yeah.
Yeah. And then with the case of AI.
Yeah.
Which I'm not going to lie, there is, as I researched this and as I've just like experienced AI myself, there is a taper to a person's knowledge, I feel like, where you rely so heavily on something that you lose touch with what you can really do if you're forced to push yourself beyond what you think you're capable of. A little tiny example, I play the solitaire game on my phone sometimes. It's just, basic solitaire, spider solitaire. And there's a section where you can hit hint and it'll highlight cards and be like, you can make this move. I made a point to not use it. I was using it heavily, especially when I was tired in the mornings and I was just like, I just want to finish this game or whatever. I was using it heavily and then I stopped using it. And I was able to finish my set of cards like stupid quick.
See, okay, and that's the thing of if you don't use it, you lose it type
Mhm.
of thing. So when we look at spiritual gifts and stuff like that, when you rely so heavily on other people, outside people, technology to kind of come up with things instead of like turning to your own intuition, your abilities and those type of things are going to get weaker and weaker and weaker because you're not exercising those. So like this guy, he was constantly doing things to strengthen his knowledge and his intuition and pick up his pattern recognition.
Mhm.
Where when you know, rely on chat GBT for every little thing, like you're not exercising that point of your brain. So it's like you're not really going to end up feeding your intuition
Mhm.
in a sense. And yeah, then I think that's why in this day and age, I see a lot of people very like lost in themselves because they don't have like a core grounded thing, like an intuition to go back
Yeah.
to of knowing that they can make the right decision. They can figure it out themselves.
Mm.
They can use context clues and, you know, stuff like that.
So on that, just a little bit. Two things. One, I've been experimenting a little bit more with like music recently, and I've been feeling this feeling, which is like I want to make a specific sound or I want to do something, and I'm like lacking that context. But I've noticed I reach for the internet to give me those clues instead of just experimenting with sound design. That's one. And two, I thought of like AI does do a lot of and has the potential to do a lot of the thinking for you, but it can also give you exercises to help you, you know, try to grow yourself in the way that it could be like, well, chat, I'm trying to improve my ability to like make sound design and stuff like that. I just want to stretch that ability, and I want you to give me a response that's as hands off as possible, but that stimulates it. That if you need that, that can get you going in the right direction. You can start developing in that way, or like give me a challenge to make song lyrics or something like that. I mean, yes, you could 100% go and find that information on your own, but I also think about it like if I go and talk to you and I get that same like stimulation, it's not them doing thinking for me. It's them giving me some little thing that I can hang on to and then go from there. So, I mean, it's a balance because a lot of people are automatically reaching for it, like everything, like with the TV remote. You, if you could turn on the TV with just your brain, I'm sure people could do it.
Yeah.
But the reason why we have the TV remote is because we didn't want to have to go and get up and turn the TV on every single time. So we invented this thing that does it for us, and that's human nature. The
Yeah.
more convenient, that's gonna sell, and that's the thing that people are gonna go for the most. So I see the negatives of like it with humans, but I also see the positive of it being in like more, sorry to say, capable hands. And it's something that humans are going to have to learn. And they're not going to learn that lesson until it kind of bites them in the butt, unfortunately, which is also a human trait.
Yeah.
But anyways, so back to Mr. McGonagall. So he had this helicopter crash. He recovered from it, and then he started to be able to get more in tune. I'm not exactly sure when. Maybe after or maybe during his time in the army, that he ended up coming across, you know, Hal Puthoff and Ingo Swann and these other people that were in SRI and also in Operation. I keep forgetting about it. Gondola Wish.
Okay.
So he got involved in it, and they went through like a vigorous process of like picking people out from like 300 candidates to narrowing it down to like 3
Okay.
at a time. So he made it through. He got involved in it. He was in the lab a lot, and he carried out, I think, 450 individual missions
Wow.
during his time. He spent a long period of time in that program, and he was just doing remote viewing. And one of the interesting things that he said was what distinguishes me from the other remote viewers is there was a general at one point that was in charge of these rooms and like making sure that people were accommodated. And he would give them like a note or a piece of paper, which was like, what are all the things that we could do better, like to help you tap into it a little bit more? And they were mostly like, I could hear people on the other side of the wall. I get distracted. Like it's too cold, it's too hot, it's not quiet enough, it's too quiet, or whatever. And they would kind of play to these needs and wants for these people. But McGonagall, he didn't want to be catered to. He actually wanted to be able to do that despite the distractions.
Okay.
Which I feel like really set the difference between him and some of the other remote viewers, as he's actually demonstrated this in television a few times.
Well, and just like it just goes to show, like, I'm sure the people that they were, doing this experiment with, that needed it to be quiet or needed it to be a certain temperature, they probably weren't as experienced or weren't as practiced as this guy who could do it under pressure or do it with noise or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. I don't see it being outside of the realm. But I think it was really smart for him to have the intuition to do it despite whatever conditions he was in. He would do it at his desk. When he was practicing, he would just constantly do these remote viewings. And to the point where he actually said that there are YouTube videos online where somebody will post a target
and
have other people practice with it, where he will like post a story or something in the morning, and in the evening he'll post the results.
Okay.
Interesting.
So he's basically teaching people, how to do it.
Yeah, he teaches people actually in a classroom. Like I think it's like the Monroe Institute or something like that. I'm gonna have to get my facts straight on that one, but he actually was doing this a few years ago. Like up until a few years ago, he was still teaching people how to remote view, and I was like, wow, that's really, really cool. That he's trying to give this gift that he has to other people, and especially because he was like one of the top ones that was able to remote view. I respect him for being willing to teach that information, because after he got out of the program and out of the army and he retired from there, he ended up starting his own firm where he would give advice to individuals that obviously paid him. So some of them will be like legal, some of them would be for like investments, some of them would be for like a missing person. He's old and retired now, and he doesn't do that much anymore. But at the end of this interview, or like where I left off, he said like, I'd never turn down like a missing kid. Like if you have a missing child, like come to me and I'll do what I can. So he's a good guy. I like him. But I want to get to one of his most controversial remote viewings. So I think it was like after the helicopter crash, I think it was after the helicopter crash. He had been having these out-of-body experiences, which was another thing that they ended up experimenting on. So the army or the agency that he was working for at the time was like, okay, you keep having these. We think that you should control them. We want you to go work with this doctor over here and like work in the lab. So he said that he'd have like 15-hour days where he was just in the lab, and then he'd go into like this isolation room for a little bit to like sleep. And he'd do this constantly. And then he'd go back to like maybe like a week or something like that. He'd be with this doctor, with a scientist, trying to control his out-of-body experiences, which apparently he ended up learning how to control. But he did not elaborate on that. Which is really interesting, because I wonder what that did to him.
Because I will say that. So there's a lot of people that like know how to do this, or like in their dreams, they're able to kind of tap into certain things. And I've heard multiple stories of people, like it's some kind of dream.
Lucid
dreaming. Yes. And so basically people were talking about how they would lucid dream and they'd try to go into like government buildings or like Area 51 shit. And they would always be met with people in the actual dream that were not allowing them access into these things. So it's clearly people on the other side that are in the government that also lucid dream that are keeping people out of certain government entities as well, which I'm like, honestly, the more I learned about this stuff, the more I'm like, yeah, I believe all this shit because.
And I'm sure that they're still carrying out these experiments now, just like way under tighter lock and key.
Oh yeah, like they are not telling the average American citizen what's going on right.
Like they didn't tell them back then, they're not going to tell us now.
Right, we're just finding out about this kind of shit now. So
yeah. Project Stargate actually only ended in 1995. That's when it was officially like ended. Officially. That we know. Right. But that was not that long ago.
Yeah.
That was like a few years before I was born. So
well, then there was like other weird things that I started, which I don't know how much like truth there is because it's more people talking about growing up. And it was kids that would go into these, it was like the gate kids or whatever. So I don't know if this was maybe partially tied into it, but basically there was a lot of group of kids that like all around our country that started talking about how they all had these shared experiences of like drinking something and then doing these tests and then having these whatever. And like they kind of like alluded to, and then there's this thing called like Mall World where a bunch of these kids that gone through this like gate program or whatever all dream about this same place almost, and it's like these empty weird buildings that are just almost like abandoned, but it's like it's really weird, but people have like dreamed about like the same places and stuff like that. So
oh shit,
what?
Wildflower 17 says I was in that, and for the gifted and talented.
Yes.
Which the Monroe Institute actually had a gifted and talented program. I did not get into it very much, but I have heard about that. That's crazy, Wildflower. Holy shit.
So that's where, like, because a lot of kids remember drinking this, like, pink drink.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where then it's like they kind of started experimenting on kids and like, do kids have that type of stuff? And yeah.
I'm sure they do.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Kids are so much more tapped into like the spiritual world. They can see things that we can't. They can pick up on energies we can't because they don't have this precognition of like, it's not real. So there's nothing almost like blocking them from that.
Yeah. And speaking of which, coming back to our man, Joe, the way that he described remote viewing for him was once you hit this like plateau, that's where the next level resides. And you can improve upon that. But when you hit that, space and time don't have the same context as it does for you and me. I don't know exactly what that means, but I know that he's on a different plane.
Yeah.
If space and time does not mean the same thing for him as it does for you and I, that is kind of scary.
Well, yeah, just like the timeline jump stuff and like we could go a whole nother episode about all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't think time and space is what people think it is.
I don't either. But Wildflower says, yes, it was before we started any activities, the pink drink, apparently. And we do these audio tests. And you can find them on YouTube, like the actual tests.
Ooh,
we should definitely look into that.
Creepy.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Thank you, Wildflower.
Yeah, thanks for giving us your perspective.
Interesting. Maybe we'll have you on the podcast one of these days.
No, literally.
So, speaking of time and space, this is directly leading into that controversial test that I told you about. So, Joe McGonigal was sleeping, and then the CIA came in, and they were like, "We have a target for you." So they went into the room. They actually recorded this. And they were given an envelope, which the tester, like for that example that we had earlier, didn't know what it was. They were just in the room with Joe, and they said, "Here's your target." They gave coordinates. So Joe went to these coordinates, and he said, "I see a massive pyramid, bigger than anything that we have here. Like it's amazingly huge." Like, and he would interject like, is this like a new discovery or something? And the tester would be like, I just want to know about the target. Tell me about the target. He said that inside of the pyramids, there were like these shelters. As he described, these shelters where humans would be. They looked like humans, but they were huge. They were really, really tall, really, really big, way bigger than us. The feeling that he got was that these people would go into these chambers in these pyramids and like hibernate basically until like time had passed and they can come out. And he also commented that the sun looked weird. And when they ended up finishing the tests, I think there was also one more thing, and there was like an obelisk, kind of like the Washington Monument obelisk that he saw. I don't know if he made the distinction that it was bigger or smaller. I'm sure that it would have been huge if these pyramids were huge too. But when all was said and done, the tester took out the envelope from his pocket, and then Joe opened it, and it said Mars 1,000 BC. No, 1 million BC.
Weird.
Fucking crazy.
Well, okay, because there's a lot of different storylines that talk about like giants, and like even the Bible has like a little reference to giants. I think they're like Nephilim or something. But yeah, some people speculate that humans over time have gotten smaller because there's like less oxygen, less whatever. So naturally we've gotten smaller over time. That's a theory. But yeah, there's a lot of theory around that. That's very interesting.
The one that I knew was I actually thought we got bigger because during the time of like the Vikings, they were like 5'6" is the tallest person. And they actually just recently found somebody that was like 6 foot among them. That was a quote giant. This was a recent discovery in Germany, I think. So
okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
But it's really interesting in that, like, if he has been correct, then how did he even said he saw the face on Mars, which is a real thing.
Okay.
Just interesting. I wonder how much of that is true, but we aren't going to know until we actually go up and visit Mars. Like, these little rovers aren't going to do nothing for us. We're probably going to have to excavate. And by the time that happens, you and I will be in wheelchairs.
Like, we'll be old.
Oh, yeah.
In a nursing home. Yeah. So that's where I think it's very interesting, because when we talk about stuff like this, it's like there's this meme going around TikTok where it's like the tinfoil hat thing, where it's like a picture, and it's like obviously like the whole tinfoil hat theory of like, oh, you're crazy and you have all these government conspiracy theories and stuff. But the more I learn about stuff, the more I see how the world works, the more I see the patterns, the more honestly, like, all this information, it doesn't even like surprise me. It's honestly, it makes sense that there would be so much weird intricate shit out there, and like super planned, super studied, but it just like, I think it's kind of scary topics. So obviously they're not going to put it out to mainstream media, and it's not going to be like a Facebook post or like, you know, on one of these entertainment news sites.
Or they will dilute it to the point where if you see it, it'll just go right past you.
Right. To kind of downplay it. So yeah, I just think there's a lot of unknown things out in the world. We don't even know what the US, for instance, has even done to other countries extensively. Like, we know probably 2% of it. Yeah. So yeah, we really don't know what the government is doing behind closed doors. So all this stuff does not seem out of reach for them to be doing.
Learn how to remote view and then go and spy on them yourselves.
Yeah, no, literally.
They literally said it. There's no defense against it. So come back to us with the resulds.
No, literally. You could be on the podcast if you figure it out.
Reach out to us at uncontrolledpopulation@gmail.com.
No, literally.
Also, Wildflower says in the Bible, Nephilim
yep.
Were a certain breed that was half angel, half human.
Oh,
interesting.
Okay.
But the more that I learn about this too, the more I was literally talking to one of my coworkers about this earlier today. The more that you're able to like get rid of those layers that separates you from the inner workings of your brain. So like the intuition that comes in, the more that you're able to tap into that and do away with like the logic brain, you know, the part of yourself that says that's not possible or this is possible. Also the ego.
Yeah.
Because according to Joe McGonigal, when he was hitting his 25 streak of misses, it was due to his ego. He had been fed all of this, like, you're the best. And like, if I'm the best, then why can't I do this?
Right.
So he had like a streak of 25 misses.
Wow.
Due to it, because of it's like a mental clot in your head.
It is. And I think when you that's a good point, because with the ego, and I think that's why America is in the situation it is. Because when you feed people, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best.
Oh, poor you. Like, you deserve better.
Yeah, there's no room for improvement. There's no room for practice.
Mm-hmm.
There's no room to gain anything because you're not seeking out more. You're kind of fine with the status quo, with where you're at. So that's why it's like always good to learn, always good to
challenge yourself,
and let your ideal, like, you don't need to be so stuck to the thoughts you have where you can't accept new information. That's like the biggest thing, is you have to constantly be okay with accepting new information and be okay with it, like changing your perspective.
Yeah. Again, one of the things that I respect about Joe is when he was teaching this class, he said, okay, one of the things I'm not going to do is I'm not going to give a history lesson of remote viewing. We're going to actually be practical about this. And I'm constantly going to be changing this, and you guys are going to have to be okay with it if you want me to teach them. And then they said, sure, do whatever you have to do. So constantly redoing the curriculum and the practices and the protocols that he instilled in place was something that he built into his learning curriculum, because there's always something new to be developed, always something new to learn, always some new trick that you can do in order to get better results. And if you think that to stay in these bounds like forever and I can't change, you're really just cutting yourself short and hurting yourself rather than helping, because the one constant in the universe is change.
Right. So you need to be okay with change.
Absolutely. Yeah. One last thing was, I don't know if this necessarily ties into it, but it did come into my field when I was researching it, and it was a really powerful quote. And I feel like it kind of is a good way of summing up a bunch of things. And the quote was by this psychologist, like phlebotomist. He was somebody that like ponders and stuff.
Oh, like a
philosopher, yes, named Carl Jung.
Okay.
The quote is, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate.
That's pretty good.
So I'm curious, what does that mean to you?
Kind of just going back to, if you're so stuck in your ways to the point where you can't accept new information, you're going to kind of drive yourself mad. Like, I think about, for instance, really religious people that think that this is the story, they know it. There's no room for interpretation. There's no room for new information.
And anything that happens is fate and God.
Right. It's almost like, honestly, you could see people go into religious psychosis. You know what I mean? And just me having OCD, watching other people where it's like they could have religious OCD and have no idea. You know what I mean? And so it's just like, when you get so stuck in your fixed aspect and your tiny little hole, then you're not going to really, again, get new information, and you will drive yourself mad.
I agree. It's really interesting. Like, I'm in that point where I'm thinking about this stuff more, and I have more tools at my disposal than ever to like critically think about like consciousness and what goes on behind the scenes that's not tangible. Yeah. That's clairvoyant. The gut instincts, or like trusting your gut. That's more pivotal than like now to me more than ever. Yeah,
no, I agree. Especially in this day and age where we've talked about propaganda. We talked about what's going on with the government. We've talked about how media plays a big part into that. So it's really good to, in these times, turn back to your intuition, like practice that, really, really seek out that, because that's really something like that, even with all this shit, the government can't take away from you. You know what I mean?
It's
So,
true.
yeah, just get grounded with yourself. I think that comes back to, spirituality stuff of like, the more grounded you are within, the more answers you have, the more knowledge you seek, the more connections you make, whether it's with people or brain neural connections. So
the more full of a life that you have.
Yeah.
It's enriching.
It is.
It's really enriching. Got a question for you before we end it. How long do you think that we've been going for?
Maybe a little over an hour.
Try an hour and 21 minutes.
All right, that's a pretty good. Okay, every time we start, we're like, okay, hopefully we have enough, info on this, and then we end up rambling forever, and we could probably go on for another hour. But
yeah, so that was our little episode of Project Stargate. I hope y'all learned something. I did with the clairvoyance and making those connections. And what do you think about the Mars thing before we go?
Okay, honestly, that whole thing is so cool to me, because I actually did pay a there was this person that, like, she was doing these like past life connections thing, and I sent in a bunch of info about me and a couple other people. This was a while ago. But they talked about like past life regression and like all that kind of stuff. So I've always believed in that. But it's cool that there's more
evidence.
Yeah. That
to corroborate it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that it's like, okay, it's like, I obviously don't believe what the government tells us, but the fact that the government is doing these experiments, and then we're kind of seeing firsthand that the experiments are, playing out correctly. And we're seeing that these powers or these abilities or whatever you want to call it are real, and they are working. You know what I mean? So,
and they're interested in it too.
Right.
They're spending millions of dollars, millions at this point, millions of dollars on this shit.
Yeah. So that just goes to show, like, they clearly think it's a thing enough to spend a bunch of fucking money on it. So
seriously,
yeah. But no, that the Mars thing was really cool.
I thought so as well. Hold on 1 second. It's not showing up on my phone, but we have something
comment?
Possibly, or that's a spam, and I'm gonna have to ban them. Give me 1 quick second. It's not friendly to my phone, unfortunately.
Technical difficulty.
Nope, it's nothing.
Oh,
all right.
Okay.
Well, thank you everybody so much for tuning in. We will be back next week. I think we're doing UFOs next week, right?
Is that next week?
We'll get back to you on that.
Yeah,
we'll have something planned.
We do have something planned. But yeah, this episode will release on YouTube next week, and Spotify. And yeah, obviously you can watch us live on Twitch for the next couple days. But yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. It was fun to talk about it.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm Sam.
I'm Peyton.
And this has been Uncontrolled Population. We will see you all next in 2 weeks.